Hello, welcome back to the OTB channel. Little bit of a contentious title today, one distro to rule them all. So let me start by explaining what I mean by that. I'm not talking about there being a best distro out there, which is better than all the rest. I'm talking about what distro am I going to use as my default. It's been an important question for me because up until moving across to the Intel NUC and starting this channel, my distro hopping days had disappeared 10 years previously. I've never been the sort of person who just boots one distro at a time. I'd always multi-booted, but I tended to use Slackware on my laptop. That's still the case and that's not going to change. I have used plain vanilla Debian for a long time, usually used for when I'm doing real work, when I'm working at home. And in fact, that was one of the reasons why when I installed vanilla Debian on this machine, I also installed Office 365. Wouldn't be the distro I'm booting into all the time, but would be there for stability. The distro to rule them all, though, would be the distro that I would use on a day-to-day basis, where I would do my playing, my experimenting, installing things that perhaps could break the system, and not being too concerned about breaking it, because I could always do a reinstall and there would always be a Debian as backup. Now, previously, up to a few years ago, that would have been Ubuntu. But a couple of years ago, that changed. And I realised, reading some of the comments that I've had on my reviews of videos, that perhaps it's time I got back to where I was. One person commented on my PC Linux OS review last week, not so much a review, more a voyage of discovery. And that must set me thinking, actually. That's exactly what it is. When I'm looking at these different distros, it's hard to do a straightforward, objective review, as much as that can ever exist. Because over the last 10 to 15 years, I don't think there is a bad distro out there anymore, or at least I've not come across it. They all do the job. They are all more or less stable, but you make the choice about what kind of distro you're going to run. And it's become more a question of things like the interface you use, the package management system, whether or not you want a rolling release or something stable. And when I do my reviews, I suppose I have that in mind, that I've almost switched back into my distro hopping days where I'm looking for the perfect system, which is perhaps why I spend a lot of time fiddling with the interface to see if I can make it my own. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but actually, as I've started to consider this, I'd already found the perfect interface. I like Ubuntu Mate, and I like it configured in a certain way. And whether or not I can get another distro to look like that, like I want it to look, and to do as I want it to do, it's simply a case of messing about with the interface. So, given that they're all pretty much of a muchness, I've decided to stop distro hopping quite so much. That's not to say I won't still be reviewing distros, but I'm not going to go all out and try and install them on my SSDs. At the moment, I've got Ubuntu, vanilla Debian, Fedora, OpenSUSE, Endeavour OS. There is no way that I need all of those distros. It's great to play with them, but I think it's time to back off a little. So, making some decisions, I'm going to keep vanilla Debian for the reasons that I've just spoken about. It's absolutely rock solid. But what am I going to do as far as the distro to rule them all? the one that I'm going to boot into every day, my Play distro. This is what this video is going to be about, and I'm going to give you my reasons as to why I've made the choice I have, and you may agree with it, you may disagree with it. Hey, that's the beauty of Linux. We have so many choices. Ta-da! So you can see in front of you my desktop. I've chosen Arch Linux as the distro to rule them all on my machine. This is not Endeavour OS, this is Vanilla Arch. I've ran it up until a month or so ago for a couple of years, and there are a whole range of things I like about this distro, which has shaped my decision to use it as my main driver. You can see I've got some nice wallpaper on there. I've got my usual Mate system up. I've configured it to my liking, and it's working really well. It's got an entire SSD to itself. So let's talk about why I've chosen Arch Linux. I'm sure that won't exactly have come as a surprise to that many of you. It was always going to be Vanilla Debian or Arch. And Arch just squeaked Debian to the post because although Debian is incredibly stable, it's not as up to date as I would like for my daily use. Fedora, great distro. I just prefer the package management of Arch. And OpenSUSE, yeah, it's okay. I haven't really got a problem with it, but it's not necessarily doing it for me. So what's the first reason that I've chosen Arch? Well, would you believe the installation process? Which is probably the thing that Arch gets the most criticism for. And in fact, when I installed Endeavour OS, I made the statement that I love the Calamaris installer because it makes an Arch installation really quick. And I don't believe you learn a huge amount from going through the Archway installation. And I would stick with that. I thought Endeavour was great. It is a proper Arch system. It's not... You could never say Endeavour is to Arch what Ubuntu is to Debian, because Ubuntu and Debian are completely different. Yes, they use the same package management system, and yes, the Ubuntu has its roots in Debian, but the similarities are or seem to be less than the differences these days. With Endeavour, it's an Arch system with an installer. So I suppose I could have just taken the entire SSD where I wanted to put this main distro on and used Endeavour to install. And that would have been a valid choice. However, I wanted this to be a completely vanilla install that I built up from scratch and installed only what I wanted. Now, I would stick by my view that you don't learn a huge amount by installing Arch the Arch way up until the point where you've got a base install. However, it really starts to come into its own when you're looking at adding all the various components to make it work. You know, adding cups to get your printers to work, making sure you add in Network Manager and the applet, and taking all the networking decisions. Are you going to include SSH? What firewall do you want? It doesn't make any decisions for you. Now, Endeavour was great, but one of the decisions it made for me was to give me an XFCE DE already installed and already customized. I didn't really want to go that route. So I decided to do Vanilla Arch, and to be honest, I've done the Arch install the Archway so many times, it isn't a problem. It's really quick and straightforward. I've never shown an Arch install on my channel because there are so many videos out there showing people how to do it. I mean, if you want me to do it at any point, give me a shout, but I've left it alone for the time being. But I like the installation process because it is simple and it does allow me to build up something that is uniquely mine. There's also a sense of satisfaction there. When you've got a distro in front of you, your operating system, and you know that the things that are in it are what you have made the decision to put in it and nothing else. So that's why I've gone for that. Is there a little bit of egoism there? You know, that I can do this installation which people regard as hard? Possibly. I don't know. I don't find it particularly hard, but anybody who does it, or intends to do it, I would suggest that if you want to do the same thing, play around in a virtual machine until you've got it cracked. And then it's fairly straightforward once you've got the basics. So the installation process, yeah, that was a key factor. I wanted something that was absolutely vanilla right from the word go. I do, again, think Endeavour is absolutely brilliant, and if you can't be bothered to go through the Arch install Endeavour. It's the nearest thing you'll get to it. Now, after saying what I've just said, I'm sure there'll be those amongst you who would say, well, Steve, you've still made the wrong decision. What you should have installed is Gentoo. I have installed Gentoo. I've installed Gentoo once. It took me 6 or 7 hours to do a complete install, and that was on the 3rd time of trying. And I eventually got an XFCE desktop up and running, and I ran it for a little while. For me, it was too much like hard work. I don't really want to compile everything from source. I like building a desktop that is mine, but I also appreciate the speed of the package manager. And this is where the second reason I installed Arch came in. I love Pacman. It's quick. On my systems, I found it quicker than apt. And I've not had any problems with it. And yes, the syntax is a little bit fiddling about, -syu, etc. But I just create aliases in my .bash rc, so that's not a problem. And it's been flawless so far as dependency management is concerned. I also use Yay as an AUR helper, and in the same way, I've had no problems with that whatsoever. Yes, Arch does tend to throw a lot of updates at you, but you have to almost learn to ignore them coming down constantly. I tend to update my system once a week. On a Saturday, when I switch the system on, I'll do an update. And it just becomes habit, and it only takes a few minutes, so it's not a hassle. So package management with binary packages, using Pacman, really important. Using an AUR helper, also a great boon, because I don't have to worry about doing all that configure, make, install, messing about or setting use flags. It just does it for me. So Gentoo, it's another great system, as I'm sure Linux from Scratch is, and I've not tried that. But it's a good middle ground. So Pacman and the installation process, 2 of the key reasons why Arch is the distro to rule them all on my system at the moment. So what else has influenced my decision to install Arch and make it my main driver? Well, I think the next item is something everybody's aware of. It's the sheer amount of available software that Arch has, not only in its own repositories, but also in this wonderful thing called the AUR. Community contributed build scripts, which using an AUR helper are simplicity itself to install. It's like one of Ubuntu's PPAs, but actually, to me, it just feels a little bit more integrated. And although I've had no problems with any of the packages I've installed from the AUR, if you choose a particular package, you can always look on the AUR page and you'll see community comments there and any issues that there's been. Absolutely great. A key thing for me is what software is available. And so far, I haven't actually come across a piece of software that I like to install that hasn't been available on Arch. So that's a massive bonus. So the installation process, the package management, and the availability of thousands and thousands of software packages are key things for me. There's also, though, something that even non-Arch users use, the wiki. Let's just have a very brief look at this. Whatever you need to know about Arch, or in many cases, work that you want to do on other distros, is pretty much available on the Arch wiki. My view is it's well laid out, and it takes you through the whole process. I know that the Arch forums get a bit of stick for being not newbie friendly. I wouldn't know. I'm not a member of the Arch forums. I've always found a Google search combined with the Arch wiki has given me all the answers that I need. It is an absolutely great resource and to my mind, one of the best resources out there on Tinterweb. So that's great. I have found out so much through reading the Arch wiki. It's not the sort of thing that you will sit down and go through page by page. It's very much a resource where you look things up when you're unsure about how to do something. All the answers are here. And last but not least, I have to say something about the nature of Arch itself, which appeals to me. It's a rolling release. I quite like the fact, firstly, that once you've installed it, it's installed. You don't have to be constantly looking forward to when is the next release coming out. As a result, you tend to have quite a few updates come down the line constantly, but that's not as much of a hassle as you might be thinking. Do an upgrade once a week and you're sorted. The big advantage is you also have the latest versions of packages on Arch, which is great. Certainly if you take one of the packages that I use all the time, OBS Studio, latest version of OBS Studio is just available on Arch. I had to add a PPA for that in Ubuntu. So that's pretty much it. They are the 5 main reasons why I have decided to install Arch as my main driver: the installation process, the package management, the availability of software, the wiki as a source of reference, and the fact that it's a rolling release and very up to date. So as usual, I've taken you on my journey and my thought process over the course of the week, which has led me to rethink the distro hopping that I've been doing and to stabilise my system again. It's also got me thinking a little bit about what I will do as far as reviews are concerned. Because to be honest, I've pretty much reviewed the majority of the distros that I'm personally interested in. I tend to like those that stay relatively near to their source. And by that I mean I would rather review Debian as opposed to a Debian derivative, or Arch as opposed to an Arch derivative. But nevertheless, I've split off and had a look at the likes of Endeavour and even Peppermint at one point, both cracking distros. I'm probably going to change the way I've been doing this, though. I will still continue to do reviews of interesting distros that come up, but you won't see me doing a review of all the Ubuntus as they come up in October. Ubuntu's Ubuntu, and unless there's something particularly special about it, the changes that are introduced, if any, I think I'll leave that to other people. What I think I want to do now is perhaps look at DEs. There are a couple of DEs that I'm particularly interested in looking at. Budgie is one. I keep hearing the name. I've not tried it. So I want to have a look at that. There's also some distros out there that seem to be getting a good reputation. Solus is one. Not looked at that. Deepin is another. Not looked at that. So we'll see how this pans out over the coming weeks and months. I'm afraid this has been a mad week. I've been down in that London all this last week, and I'm off to another part of the country all of next week. And as a result, I've got a fairly busy weekend preparing for work next week. So life is getting in the way a little bit of this channel this weekend. Hey, it happens. So there is only going to be this one video this week. I said right at the beginning that I would produce a minimum of one video a week. And so far it's averaged a couple a week. But I'm afraid this week it's just the one because I'm absolutely snowed under. Life's just got in the way. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. Have a great weekend, everyone. And I'll see you next week. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And stay well until next time.